We've started.
Recording? Okay, thank you. All right, good evening, everyone. We will call our council meeting to order. I would like to welcome everybody to the council meeting of March the 22nd. It is now 6:02. We have a number of people joining us. I would ask everyone to please keep themselves on mute unless you're going to speak. And then if you do want to speak, there is a reactions screen button at the bottom. If you press that and raise your hand, I'll probably have a better chance of seeing it, but I will try to catch everybody that wants to speak because I know we are starting off with a public meeting. And I'll try to catch them and get them in the proper order. So as I said, our council meeting is called to order. First on the agenda tonight is a public meeting under section 34 of the Planning Act. And I would suggest that we're going to turn this over to our planner, our junior planner, Ken Scullion, is going to go through the first couple of applications which deal with some rezonings. Okay, go ahead, Ken.
Sure. I'll just start off with the preamble here. The following is a public meeting for a zoning bylaw amendment held under section 34 of the Planning Act. If a person or public body would otherwise have an ability to appeal the decision of the Council of the Township of Otonabee-South Monaghan to the local planning appeal tribunal, but the person or public body does not make oral submissions at a public meeting or make written submissions to the Township of Otonabee-South Monaghan before the bylaw is passed, the person or public body is not entitled to appeal the decision. If a person or public body does not make oral submissions at a public meeting or make written submissions to the Township of Otonabee-South Monaghan before the bylaw is passed, the person or public body may not be added as a party to the hearing of an appeal before the local planning appeal tribunal unless, in the opinion of the tribunal, there are reasonable grounds to do so. Notification for this application was circulated to all required agencies and landowners within 120 meters of the subject property, at least 20 days prior to this meeting. In accordance with the applicable Planning Act regulations, notification was also posted on the township website. So the first application we have here is Clare Glen zoning bylaw amendment. That is for the lands addressed 3168 County Road 2 within Keene. This is for a condition of consent. This is a condition of consent rezoning application for consent application B3020. The applicant is proposing rezoning the severed lands from future development to hamlet residential to meet the provisions for lot area and lot frontage. The retained lands are zoned future development and have not been proposed to be rezoned. The severed lands are in the southeast corner of the parcel and have a lot area of approximately 0.9 hectares, the lot frontage of approximately 121 meters. There is a residential dwelling on the severed parcel. The retained lands will have a lot area of approximately 31.7 hectares and a lot frontage of approximately 567 meters, and the retained lands are vacant. Now, I believe that's it, and if there are any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Thank you, Ken. As you said, this is a condition of consent. Are there any questions from members of council on this this particular application? Seeing none, this is a public meeting. Is there anybody who is part of our meeting tonight that would like to speak for the application? Seeing nothing, is there anybody who wishes to speak either in opposition or to seek clarity on the information? Again, seeing nothing. At this point in time, are members of council prepared to make a decision on this application? Deputy Clerk.
Yes, I'm prepared to support the decision and go with the recommendation and move it to the bylaw section of our regular meeting.
So the motion is to approve the recommendation with the one condition on there and refer to the bylaw section. That's very clear. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Powers. Any further questions on it? All in favor? That is carried. Thank you very much. I think we're just about as agreeable as the weather is today. That's very nice. Go ahead, Ken.
Okay. Next application is another zoning bylaw amendment relative to 3676 Lakeside Road. And it again is for a condition of consent for consent application B3618. The applicant has proposed rezoning for the severed lands from rural to rural residential to accommodate the lot area of the proposed lot. Portions of the retained lands are being rezoned from rural to environmental protection to remain consistent with the environmental protection land use designation in the township's official plan. The severed lot is vacant and is central to the south side of the lot and fronts onto Lakeside Road. It has a lot area of approximately 0.35 hectares and will have a frontage of approximately 38 meters. The retained parcel will have a lot area of approximately 41 hectares in size with over 600 meters of frontage on Lakeside Road and has a single detached dwelling on it as well as a shed. And that's about it. If there are any questions, I'll be happy to answer.
Okay, thank you, Ken. Again, it seems fairly straightforward. Questions from members of council? Seeing none, same as the last time, it's a public meeting. Anybody wishing to speak in support of the application? Anybody wishing to speak in opposition or to seek clarity on the application? Again, seeing none. Is council prepared to make a decision? Councillor Howie. Go ahead, Ken.
To move to, or recommended approve the bylaw 2021-16 and move it to our bylaw section.
And with the two conditions that are listed.
Right.
Very good. Do I have a seconder? Deputy Clerk. All in favor of that motion? That motion is carried. Thank you very much, Ken. Okay, moving down in our public meeting to the off-farm diversification study that has been done. I think, Kent, are you going to take the lead in this one?
Yes, I am, Mayor Taylor.
All right, Kent, we'll turn it over to you then.
Thank you. So Ken had done the preamble and he had mentioned section 34. I should just point out that this is a public meeting under sections 22 and 34, because this involves, of course, an official plan amendment. So I just want to make sure that was clear. Same LPAT provisions apply. So we're obviously very excited to be bringing this forward tonight. We are presenting, of course, an official plan amendment and zoning bylaw amendment. General amendments associated with on-farm diversified uses and home-based business or home businesses. And so I'm going to just briefly go through the background, and then we'll just discuss the amendments themselves and just discuss how they work. So this stems from, of course, in 2018, the township undertook or began to undertake a study to review its rural and agricultural planning policies, specifically as they related to on-farm diversified uses and other secondary uses in rural areas. This was funded by the Rural Economic Development Fund through OMACRA. And so what occurred over the course of the next year or so, year or two, was a lot of consultation and review of what, firstly, what the policies and provisions that are currently in place, what they allow for, and then also a review of what other municipalities have done and what is suggested by the province through publication 851. So of course, publication 851 being this the guidelines for permitted uses in prime agricultural areas that was released by the province in 2017, and this was kind of all spurned from that because as we've noted, or as I've noted before to council, I'm sure you're aware, those guidelines were provide a little more clarity and a little more better understanding as far as planners go. We certainly have had a better understanding from reviewing those guidelines as to what is permitted as an on-farm diversified use in rural and agricultural areas. So this work was undertaken, the study, the review of the policies, and it was determined that the best course of action was to amend the township's official plan and the township zoning bylaw to provide a little more flexibility when it comes to permitting on-farm diversified uses. So just so that there's an understanding of what on-farm diversified uses is, for those who don't know, they are they're defined in the PPS. Firstly, there's in the prime agricultural areas, there's only three land uses that are permitted. As a primary use, you have agriculture or agricultural uses, right? And then we have agriculture related uses, which can be primary uses or secondary uses to agriculture. Then we have on-farm diversified uses, and this is in the PPS. This is taken right from section 2.3. These are basically the only things that you could do in prime agricultural areas. And so an on-farm diversified use, which has been permitted, those types of uses have been permitted in prime ag areas for quite some time prior to the release of these guidelines. It's defined as being secondary to the principal agricultural use on the property and is limited in area, and it includes but is not limited to home occupations, home industries, agritourism uses, and uses that produce value-added agricultural products. So that initial definition for quite a while was not necessarily understood in terms of how broad it could be. I think most planners, and I would count myself included, until those guidelines were released, we just sort of thought of OFDUs as being, home occupations, really one of the listed uses in there. But I think when you read the definition and you start to understand what the intent was, you start to realize that it wasn't the case or it wasn't the intent of the province to simply limit those uses to a certain narrow list of uses like home industries or home occupations. And that was further confirmed through publication 851. And of course those guidelines provide a lot of different examples for what non-farm diversified use could be. And so what we gleaned from that was that really what would create the best environment for farmers to establish these OFDUs, because really the intent has always been to allow farmers flexibility so that they can establish OFDUs and supplement their farm income. It helps keep farmers on the land. It helps keep farmers farming. It provides additional income to these farmers. So this was the intent, the entire time. And so, as we gleaned from the publication 851, of course, was that there is some flexibility there. So we attempted through the official plan amendments and the zoning bylaw amendment to provide as much flexibility as possible, while still providing that control from the township's perspective. And so, and what that means is that we want to be able to allow a farmer to establish what they want to establish within reason. Obviously, there isn't carte blanche, like I believe I used that term 2 weeks ago. There isn't sort of this permission to do whatever someone wants to do on the property as an on-farm diversified use. There are obviously limitations, and those limitations are spelled out in the official plan amendment and the zoning bylaw amendment. So just to describe them briefly, so the official plan amendment, of course, introduces a lot more policies related to on-farm diversified uses. It explains them a bit more, provides a lot more examples. And the big thing that we have in this amendment is this pre-consultation process that every farmer, every landowner has to go through if they want to establish an on-farm diversified use. So in order to do that, they have to come to the township. They have to present a sketch plan. They have to meet with the township, and township staff have to review this proposal in the context of the different policies and provisions that are introduced through the OPA and the ZBA. So a number of those policies are shown. I won't go through each of them in detail, but you'll see them in the official plan amendment. Specifically the new section 3.29.2. And what you'll see in those policies are a number of requirements that need to be met in order for use to be considered an on-farm diversified use. And most of those provisions are related to scale. Of course, the use has to be, it can't be more than 2% of the size of the property up to a maximum of 1 hectare. It has to be compatible with the surrounding agricultural landscape, and it has to be. It can't impede or impact the agricultural use of the property. So it can't interrupt crop rotations. It can't, and it also can't interrupt the overall agricultural uses in the area as well. So there's a number of limitations to what can be done as an on-farm diversified use. But what we didn't want to do was simply just listed, a number of uses and leave it at that. We wanted to provide that flexibility. And of course, when someone does want to come in with an on-farm diversified use, in order to establish it, they have to go through the township first. So that's still in place. But in this case, if they were to do that now, while the official plan does permit on-farm diversified uses, the zoning bylaw does not permit on-farm diversified uses as of right. So we've changed the OP obviously to broaden, to create that sort of triage system is what we call it, is what I think I referred to it in the report as. And then of course, when you get to the zoning bylaw amendment, we have a lot more of those on the ground provisions that limit the size. So for instance, I've mentioned the 2%. So that's the total area that can be used. So the use dedicated as the on-farm diversified use has to be, it can't be greater than 2%. And the floor area of any building used for the on-farm diversified use can't be greater than 30% of that 2%. So then you start to see where the limitations are in terms of what we're trying to do with permitting this. And I should say that this is what we're trying to do, is permit these uses as of right. We want to create that flexibility. We want to create that accessibility to farmers. And then just to speak briefly to the home business aspect. So the reason we mentioned the home business is because there's obviously policies and provisions in your official planning, your zoning bylaw that speak to home occupations and home industries. And of course, we don't want those to get lost. That's what we've done, is we've provided still permissions for that, but they are sort of in this next tier. So once you go above a certain size in terms of your home occupation or your home business, which is also supposed to be a secondary use to the primary agricultural use, once you reach a certain threshold, in this case it's 100 square meters, then you are kicked into the on-farm diversified use, and then so you are subject to those policies and those provisions. So that's essentially the official plan and the zoning bylaw amendment. Again, the name of the game is flexibility, and of course, the township does have oversight over anyone who's looking to establish a new on-farm diversified use. So I will mention that in terms of as of right granting, or what we're doing through this, if someone does come forward with an on-farm diversified use proposal and it's deemed by staff to be perhaps a little more land use intensive, or a little more impactful, then the staff may require the applicant to provide a site plan or an application for site plan approval, whereby they would enter into a site plan agreement. Staff also has the right to ask for additional studies. They could ask for traffic impact briefs. They could ask for stormwater if they feel it necessary. But again, we're putting that discretion at the township staff level, where we believe it should be. And again, this stems from a lot of consultation with landowners and you know, the need for the township to be a little more open for these types of uses, because again, we can't forget that an on-farm diversified use is something that is permitted as one of those 3 uses in prime agricultural areas. So that was really the gist of what we're trying to do and what we're trying to accomplish with these amendments. Again, it's a long time in the making, and we've gone through quite a few iterations of these amendments. We think that we've got it right, and that's why we have provided them the draft documents, or the documents, to you tonight for adoption and approval. I'll just mention briefly that we have had obviously comments come in. We've provided response to those comments, and we've council had seen the response to those comments, the official response to those comments. They're also summarized in my report. I won't go through them at all, but if you do want me to elaborate on those, I'm happy to. And so we do feel that, you know, after this time and after this consultation, that we have provided you with the best version of those amendments, and so we're recommending that you adopt and approve, obviously contingent on feedback that we received tonight. So thank you.
Very good. Thank you. Thank you, Kent. Members of council, any questions to Kent on this report or on the comments he's provided us with tonight? Councilor Powers, go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor Taylor. Kent, really good report, lots of information, very thorough. It allowed, I think, council to have a good understanding of where staff and your team are coming from as it relates to this, and the considerable work that's gone into it over the last number of years, I think shows in the breadth of the information that's provided and the comments that we have here. I do have, I'll just generally state that I am very much in support of on-farm diversified use. I think it's a great vehicle for our community and our local farmers to provide economic benefits for them, particularly the smaller ones that cannot necessarily benefit from a smaller farm operations to the fullest extent. And so I think this does give them some opportunities. And at the same time, I think it's also important that we're protecting our agricultural land, which is certainly one of our very important assets in our community. So I think obviously there's a balancing act, and I think in a lot of ways the team here has put together a proposal that does, in a lot of ways, find that balance, so to speak. Couple of questions though around the approval process. I think that there's probably some concerns a little bit around, certainly from my perspective, around that approval process. I think there is a wide breadth of types of uses. We can't even possibly think of all the potential uses that people would, and I don't think we would necessarily even want to try to think of that, because if we do that, then we may pigeonhole a lot of the creativity and innovation that our community is so well known for. And so one of the questions I had is there any concern from staff as it relates to the situation where, well, my neighbor was given, as of right, a permitted use of under the OFDU, but you're requiring me to do this, and this. Does it put staff in a bit of a pickle where they are essentially having to validate one decision over the next? And obviously they do that on a regular basis, but it seems to me that there's no real you're in or you're out kind of within this. Because of that flexibility, it does create some subjectivity to it, and that subjectivity can then cause confusion and maybe some animosity between they got it, I didn't get it. Why is that? So I'm just curious what's maybe staff's perspective, or if you had thoughts on that.
Through the mayor to Councilor Powers, yeah, that's certainly a valid question, and it's something that we thought about. What we attempted to do to try to stop that from happening, or to try to standardize it a little bit, was that if you note in the policies, there's a series of questions that are asked, and which is a little that's not necessarily typical. You don't see that a lot in policy writing, but it's a number of questions that really staff need to ask themselves when it's kind of like a checklist. So if you're going through that checklist and you're not checking off one of them, that means that you need to put more thought into how things are going to apply, whether you're going to apply site plan control or whether it doesn't even meet the provisions of the on-farm diversified uses to begin with. And I can't sit here and say that you're not going to have some issues come up when that happens. It may very well happen where someone comes in and says, well, this person so-and-so got this, I'm proposing this, why am I not getting the same, deal, I guess. But you touched upon it. It happens quite often in other situations. And, I like to believe that the policies, the number of questions and the number of requirements that we provided will give staff all the guidance that it needs to confidently make the right decision, or confidently make the right assessment. And the other thing that I always like to say is that, and no two sites are the same. No two situations are the same, right? And if someone comes forward and said, well, why didn't I do that here? Well, they were using the barn, or they were doing this, or they were doing something. You don't have that amenity, or you don't have that type of access, or, I think that it's I'm not trying to suggest that as kind of a cop-out for staff, but certainly that's what planning is. Planning is not a one-size-fits-all endeavor. And so I think that what we provided in terms of the number of requirements and the number of questions to be asked, I think it's almost like it's like a staff guidebook for for staff to use, and I think that'll provide suitable direction. The other thing I would add is that I'm always here for help as well, and staff, there's bright minds at the township that can bounce ideas off each other to certainly try to avoid that sort of thing from happening.
Right. If I can, Mayor Taylor, just one follow-up on that comment, if I can.
Sure, go ahead.
Just the other comment I had is around again, back to the breadth of creativity and innovation that may come forward that we've seen in our township before. I'm curious, I'm sure this came up on multiple occasions in terms of the type of use. So I think your example in one of your comments in the documentation was related to a yoga studio in an unused barn. I mean, that's a great example of a small use, great reuse of an existing facility, not a whole lot of necessarily consultation required to set up a yoga studio in a barn, for example. But in terms of, if we take that to a farm wedding facility where we're building a new 2-story structure with parking and other facilities, it seems like there's a bit of a scale difference, and there may be some additional requirements such as public consultation or council involvement that we may want to have on some of those larger scales. I'm just curious if you could speak to some of that in terms of the scale from a small yoga studio to a 2-story structure related to building a wedding facility, and how that might play into this.
Through the mayor, yeah, so in terms of scale, like what we provided for in the policies is that township may utilize site plan control. So and typically we would do that if there was some sort of alteration to the site that would in our eyes create a situation where there may be stormwater management impacts, or there might for instance, a yoga studio, like you said, if someone were putting that yoga studio in their barn and not changing anything else on the site, it's unlikely we would require site plan approval. But if somebody's doing a barn wedding venue where they have to grade a parking lot, they need to put a few things in here or there, they need to add on to the barn or whatever, what have you, then we would apply site plan control. There is no public process for on-farm diversified uses. The site plan approval process, of course, is not a public process, but that was the intention. I know that there might be a hesitancy with not having that process for the larger scale uses, but again, it goes back to what the restrictions are on those uses, because they're inherently supposed to be small. So where your imagination might veer off in terms of what may be a typical wedding or barn wedding venue. It's important to remember that those policies, the 2%, the 30% floor area, and remember that 2% is everything dedicated to the use. And we went through this with the Farm Hill site, right? With the septic system, the area for the ceremonies, all of those things, they have to be very carefully calculated. So really, your scale is a limiting factor in that. So I understand fully the hesitancy behind not having that public process involved, but the idea is that by meeting all of those policies and provisions, you are doing what is in public good in terms of what the township is looking for and what the province is looking for from non-farm diversified use.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. All right, thank you, Kent. Deputy Clerk, go ahead, Bonnie.
Yes, through the mayor. First of all, thank you for the presentation, Kent, and I certainly echo Councillor Powers. We're looking for certainly diversity to keep farmers on the land, and in that point, I will refer you to page 2 of your report, which says, as a result of the study and research by township staff and EcoView, it was determined the existing policies and provisions in the OP and zoning did not provide the flexibility required to meet the needs of farmers within the township. Therefore, and again mentioned, I think it's on through about the farmers page 7, the last sentence, so that farmers may access, supplement their incomes. I find that this bylaw isn't tight enough. I would like to see the people that are farming have the off-farm diversification as well, not just rent it out to someone. I'd also like to see site plan controls on all the sites, whether it's a simple one or not. I think that puts a bit of teeth into it, and we know what's going on. And as well, the public, perception and input. I think that when you keep neighbors informed, you have good neighbors. And therefore, I don't see that input. I would like the uses to come. This is a very, very complex issue. And I would like this to come before council for each with a site plan, even if it's very simplified, so we do know what's going on. And just referring to the bylaw itself, Kent, some of the, and correct me if I'm wrong, one of the uses was a group home. Kent, if I may ask you?
Yeah,
Sorry,
sorry.
I think Kent's looking.
I'm just looking.
Okay, it's in the bylaw itself, and the other was a sale barn.
Oh,
Now I'll put on my farmer hat here. I've been in, I would say 99% of the sale barns in Ontario. And if you can pull that off in a 2.49 acre parcel, that is absolutely bizarre. I question some. We've had certainly group homes here, and public input needs to be put into those. I don't know if any of council sat on when we did have one where there on an agricultural where there was a tragedy. And that was very, very, I guess, needed public input. There was certainly a lot of things brought up. So I feel that laying this on staff rather than coming to council, I can't support the bylaw the way it is written. I have a lot of things that need clarified. The other was a minor variance. And can you give me where a minor variance, a case of that, Kent, that would be, you would council or staff would consider a minor variance?
Sure, through the mayor to deputy mayor. So in answer to your question about group homes, that we aren't introducing those, or in livestock sales barns, we aren't introducing those as new uses. What we've done is we've regrouped the existing permitted uses in the rural and agricultural zones. So those are already permitted in your rural and agricultural zones. We've just simply regrouped them. That's why it's showing up in the amendment, because we're taking that section and just replacing it. So we're just showing it all because all those numbers have been changed after.
So therefore, to my point, that then is permitted, as you say, and wouldn't come in front of council. That could be staff driven and pass. Therefore, I take exception. We're putting in the area. So we are clamping down on the amount of area allowed, but still leaving a use in place that couldn't possibly fit into the area. So that just doesn't make much sense to me. You'd put a use in that we know isn't compatible to the size.
No, through the mayor, just to be clear, that we are not introducing that as a new use. That is currently permitted in the zoning bylaw. We don't have necessarily the mandate right now with what we are presenting. We haven't, we aren't going to start sort of pulling permitted uses out right now. Like what?
So then it would have to come to council then to be passed, is what you're telling me?
No, through the mayor, that use right now, today, without, forget these amendments, the zoning bylaw currently permits those uses that you spoke of. It permits them in both the rural and the agricultural zones.
Yeah, if I can, and it has nothing to do with this study. It currently exists.
but it would have to fit in if it come through this study in the 2.49 acres.
No, no, through the mayor, I believe they're just those are just permitted uses as of right in those zones. So they're not permitted as on-farm diversified uses. Those are.
So they wouldn't be considered by staff then?
Yes, exactly.
Okay, all right,
But-
thank you.
But I should point out that they are permitted in those zones, so they would be permitted.
But they would have to go through a planning process versus staff okaying it.
No, not necessarily, because they are permitted in those zones. So if you have the zone and you are permitted to establish that use, just like if you have, commercial zone and you have one of your permitted uses is a retail establishment, you could establish that.
So therefore, if it is permitted, then there would definitely have to be a site plan to control it on the 2.49 acres.
Yes. Now we would probably do that anyway. Like it's not, I guess what I'm trying to emphasize is that what we're introducing here now with on-farm diversified uses is a separate item from group homes and livestock sales barns.
Well, it's unclear when you listed them, but then just a couple of other things. You've got on page 3 a spelling error. I think you meant to say corn maze, it's corn. And then there's another one regarding count, the MDS. You've got county instead of count. So and I believe that's on page 11, just when I was reading. Okay, thank you.
Any other questions to Kent on this one? Councilor Howie, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Kent. Like you say, a very good report, and I think it's something, this is a big decision for us to make sure we get it right going through for our township. One of the concerns I got, and I don't know how we can try and keep tabs on it, or what we don't want to do is end up having properties sold for this use, so that next thing you know, they're renting out their land and they're putting their own little business in. So really, it's not benefiting the farmer, it's benefiting the person that just bought the property. Is there anything that we can put in place to try and protect this?
So through the mayor, to Councilor Howie, so you are referring to if someone, like if a farmer were to establish an on-farm diversified use to then sell the land, what would happen?
Even before that, even like I say, somebody just purchases a farm, okay, and they have no intent to really farm, so they rent out the farm and they decide, you know what, we're going to put our own little business in here now, and that gets by the zoning and everything else that's put in place to try and keep certain development in our township.
So that could very well happen. And we're, there was a question about, whether we can limit it to just a farmer who farms the land. And what we found was that that's difficult to kind of enforce. And I think probably for the reasons that you're thinking, what we're focused on is the use itself. So is it, the key thing is that you can't establish an on-farm diversified use. It's a secondary use. You cannot establish, it has to be secondary to an active agricultural use. So the use itself has to be established. The agricultural use has to be established. Who's doing the farming isn't necessarily something that we can control to a certain extent. As much as we want to promote this as a vehicle for farmers as supplemental income for farmers, there are going to be situations where the person who owns the land may not necessarily be the person farming it, or they may operate the on-farm diversified use, and the person who owns the land may not do it, and maybe somebody else operating it. So there may be situations like that. But as long as we're maintaining the agricultural land base, it's being used and actively farmed, then that's where our concern lies. We're not necessarily concerned with the ownership arrangements that are occurring, because really what you have is everything would look the same. It doesn't necessarily matter who's operating what, as long as they're meeting all those policies and provisions. We're focused more on the use rather than the user.
Yeah, right. But like I say, one of the concerns I think we have with it is it's liable to push the market value of the real estate right through the roof, where people can't even afford to buy a farm down to farm, because they can find other ways of opening up different businesses.
Right.
Great, thank you.
Deputy Clerk, you had another question?
Yes. So through the mayor, to the point of this is to streamline a process for farmers to be able to diversify, to stay on the land. And consequently, this opens it up for someone to come in that has no intention of farming to set up a business and then rent it out. The land's going to be rented out anyway. So to me, this is not the intent of what we were trying to do. The intent was to keep farmers on small parcels in farming and to allow them an option. So therefore, I don't feel that the bylaw is tight enough, and to Councillor Howie's point, to have this for farmers. Thank you.
Kent, did you want to respond to that? I see Greg.
Only,
Greg.
Mr. Mayor, only that I would say that it does. The thing is that there is obviously it's a bit of a double-edged sword, because you want to provide farmers with those opportunities. I'm not here to say, I'm not going to lie to you and say that someone might do exactly what the deputy mayor said. Absolutely, that could very well happen. But we do firmly believe that the benefits of providing that flexibility, far outweigh those possibilities, of people exploiting it. So that's really all I would say to that.
Okay, thank you. Greg, did you have a comment?
Just not a comment on this particular discussion, Mr. Mayor. So Councillor Allen's having a little bit of internet issues here. I think that he's, maybe Mark, if you can hear us, you can wave or say, take your thing off mute if you can talk. Go ahead, Mark.
Go ahead, Mark.
Yeah, I can try. Can you hear me?
It's broken up.
Yeah.
Try it, and if not, you may have to exit and come back in.
So he just wanted me to let you know, Mr. Mayor. So.
Can you see? Can you see my hand?
You're frozen, Mark.
And you can't hear me. When it comes time to vote, I'll just mute back in and can I let you know that?
Just try, Mark. Just try exiting and logging back in and see if that helps. Sometimes that can fix it.
I think I will. I'm just a bit concerned that I'm not going back in. So if I have right now, I'm going to wait.
Yeah.
This
Okay.
meeting. Go
Okay.
over there. I'll log that regular council meeting.
Through the mayor, does Councillor Allen have the number to phone in? If he can't get in on the internet, is there not a phone line that he could phone in and comment?
There certainly is the phone in option if all else fails.
Fails.
We're going to move on, Councillor. I think we're starting to go around in circles here. Is there any other questions from members of council to staff or to the consultant on this particular study?
I think I will. And just make.
Go ahead, Mark. No, sorry, lost you. Okay, I'm gonna open up to the. This is a public meeting, going up to the public portion of this. First, is there anybody who is part of this meeting that would like to speak in support of the application? Jamie, please. Jamie, we all know who you are and welcome. It's good to see you again, but because it's a public meeting for the clerk, I need to ask everybody who's going to speak to please state their name and address for the record. And
yes,
then go ahead.
My name is, thank you, Mayor Taylor. My name is Jamie Hofling, and I am at 357 Wingle Road in Palmer Rapids, Ontario. And Heather, if you need that, I can send that to you in an email. So I just wanted to say thank you for hosting the public meeting, Mayor Taylor and Council. I am here to support the amendments and to reassure Council that a lot of thought and careful consideration did go into drafting these policies. As Councillor Powers alluded to, there is a balancing act. And we do have to think of both sides of protecting agriculture and thinking about the economic interests of the township and our farm owners. As the former township planner, I was often approached by our farm owners and operators on what they could do on their property. And this was ongoing throughout my employment with the township. So our farm owners want these policies. Now, as a planner in the private consulting field, I am getting lots of calls from people across Peterborough County, City of Kawartha Lakes, wanting to do similar things on their property because owning a 100-acre parcel is just, it's not viable anymore. So they need our support. With the prime ag designation, as Kent said, there's very limited uses on what you can do. And these on-farm diversified uses are one of them. So when the county is going to be doing their new official plan, and a lot of Otonabee-South Monaghan may find themselves within the prime ag designation more than there currently is.
I think I will. I'm just a bit concerned.
Mark, if you can hear us, I think if you could put yourself on mute, that'd be great. Thank you. Sorry, go ahead, Jamie.
I was just going to say that with the prime ag designation from the county, we're going to need these strong policies to keep Otonabee-South Monaghan and the residents afloat because we will be limited on what we could do across the township. I just also wanted to speak to Councillor Clark's concerns, and I hear all of the concerns. But with regards to ownership, and Kent did mention this, the ownership isn't the problem. It's keeping the lands in production. So regardless of who owns the property, as long as the lands are in production and people can maintain that farm ownership, that is ideal. People have been coming from Toronto region and beyond to buy up farms for quite some time. This isn't a new thing. And farm prices have been going up for quite some time. So this is one of the ways that people can keep their farms and help keep that income coming in. And in terms of the site plan process, it is very onerous. It's very expensive. And we don't want to have our farm owners jumping through a million hoops and spending tens of thousands of dollars on approvals just to try something that may not even bring in as much income as they're hoping. And they might have to try multiple things before they're successful. So I think the way that the policies are drafted are very fair in balancing the municipality's protection and achieving actually helping the farm owners. So I just, yes, came to reassure council that a lot of consideration went into the policies. You had to think of absolutely everything. Sometimes maybe we spend too many hours going back and forth on minute details, but I can assure you that these are policies that OSM should be proud of. And as I work among other counties and areas, we're looking to this township to see all the good things that are coming out of it. So good work.
Thank you very much, Jamie. That's well said. Is there anybody else as part of this meeting, part of this public meeting, would like to speak in support of the application? Okay, seeing none. Are there anybody who would like to speak either in opposition or to seek further clarification for the application? Now, I know we have a participant named Judy. Judy, I don't even know for sure, but it could well be Judy Coward. Judy just emailed me during this meeting to say that her video is not working and she would like to speak when it comes to the opposition section. So Judy, if you can hear me, I'll turn it over to you now. As long as we can hear you, this should work fine.
Thank you very much, Mayor Taylor. It is Judy Coward, and I appreciate this. This is the first time with many Zoom meetings that my video hasn't worked, so I'm not sure what's going on. I would like to speak in opposition to the matter, and for the record, my name is Judy Coward. I live at 76 McGibbon Boulevard, Lindsay, Ontario. I'm a retired planner, having worked for the Ontario Ministry of Agriculture, Food and Rural Affairs. And as a planner, I was the town planner for the town of Niagara-on-the-Lake for 6 years, one of the prime agricultural areas within the province of Ontario. But what concerns me and why I have attended this evening's meeting is that I've seen a lot of official plan policy over the years, very well of what's included, aware of what's included in publication 851 prepared by OMAFRA. And the Township of Otonabee-South Monaghan's current official plan policies include definitions for home industries, home occupations, and on-farm diversified uses. And they're very generous policies. They provide a lot of within both the agriculture and rural designations of the township to proceed with on-farm diversified uses, home occupations, home industries, better and accessory uses. And indeed, as one who knows the municipality quite well, I can think of many of those types of activities that are ongoing on properties in the agriculture and rural designations in the township that would be classified as an on-farm use or a home industry or a home occupation. And I would say, because of the generosity of the current policies, if there's a feeling that there's some minor adjustments to include a few additional permitted uses or something else of that nature, certainly proceed with amendment of that nature. But to proceed, open up the agriculture and rural designation, which is the very large majority of the land designated within the township, to the additional policies that are proposed to be included in this official plan amendment and zoning bylaw amendment, would really take control away from the municipality in terms of managing the land uses within the township. And as anybody investing in a municipality will tell you, they look at the area, when they do their drive-by and get a feel for the area, they're looking for a well-managed community in which to locate and invest their money. The policies that are proposed proceed. It's been mentioned earlier this evening, anyone could purchase farmland from anywhere and not necessarily farm it. And yes, indeed, that does happen today on a daily basis. But what the addition to that would be with these broader policies is that a community will become well aware of the fact that in Otonabee-South Monaghan, the policies are very broad and open. And if someone chooses to purchase property there, they could indeed do a great many things on the long list of home occupations, home businesses, home industries, on-farm diversified uses that would be things in other municipalities that would be directed to industrial areas, settlement areas, urban development areas, etc. Again, as has been mentioned earlier this evening, what is proposed would be no notification to abutting property owners and neighbors, no requirement to bring the proposal before council for council's awareness, consideration, identification of any concerns that council members may have. And indeed, you know, as I've watched council meetings and very familiar with the process of severing a lot for a house in the municipality, even severing that lot requires a rezoning, which brings public notice to property owners. And that's not going to be required under these policies for much more involved types of development in a commercial and business nature of farm diversified uses. The other thing that concerns me is without the required need for a site plan control agreement, even if there is no zoning bylaw requirement, if in fact there's something that becomes a major issue, the municipality enforcement officer has nothing to approach the property owner with, because there's no signed agreement between the property owner and who's undertaking the on-farm diversified use and the municipality. So there are times when bylaw enforcement actually ends up in court, and taking a matter like that to the court, well, there's nothing to take to court because there's no agreement. It's just an as of right permission under the official plan and zoning bylaw. So it becomes very difficult for the municipality to manage problems going forward. And it's that solid land use approach, which is what the Planning Act was developed for in the first place back in the 1950s. And it gives municipalities the tools to choose what tools they wish to actually manage land uses within their community. Everyone is concerned about expense in terms of making applications and the cost of those applications. But indeed, I've found in the many years of my work that if the applicant does not have the funds to make the application for a zoning bylaw amendment, they really probably do not have the money to move forward with an on-farm diversified use and make the investment that will be required to move that particular project and initiative forward. So I think the idea of streamlining things and removing red tape is extremely frequently heard these days, and whether it's on-farm uses, small businesses, many other areas of the working community. But what is important is to ensure a working environment for all involved. And that environment includes the neighbors and the broader community. And that's what the Planning Act offers via zoning bylaw amendments and site plan control agreements. And this type of situation is not something where we can say, well, let's give it a try and see how it works out, because it's almost impossible to roll back the policies once they've been put in place. So there are many opportunities available to any owner in the municipality under the current official plan policies. And I would really encourage council to take a really serious look at those policies and support them as they exist. Again, if there's a need for a minor adjustment, make that minor adjustment, but to fling open the door all wide variety of land use is really not something that's in the long-term best interest of the municipality, and could indeed cause a lot of problems. Just please use the tools to benefit Otonabee-South and all the great things that it offers. That's my request.
Okay, thank you, Judy. That actually we could hear you just fine, so that worked out okay even without the video. Before I ask if anybody else would like to speak in opposition to it, Kent, did you wish to respond to any of those comments?
Yeah, sure, Mr. Mayor. So I just want to reiterate that the township is not giving up control. And the township doesn't only have site plan to enforce their zoning bylaw, they have their zoning bylaw to enforce their zoning bylaw. Someone who is establishing a use that's in violation of that, bylaw enforcement has every right to place a stop work order on that site, or do whatever mechanisms they need under the Planning Act to stop someone from establishing that use if they're in violation of the zoning bylaw. That's it's not an agreement between the township and the individual. Of course not. That's not what it is. But that's what a zoning bylaw does. Just as the picture that's being painted seems to be that it's going to be the Wild West, and that is not the case, and I can assure you of that. There are measures in place to stop people. That's what the zoning provisions are for. And the other thing is that you do have the right, and the township has the right to apply site plan control. So you could very well, and you would very well have agreements in place for, the more intensive uses. The other thing about the policies is that, the policies that are in place now, of course, council is aware of the Farm Hill wedding venue, and we recommended approval, and you did approve a zoning bylaw amendment for that. And if you recall, we were citing the publication 851 and looking at our existing policies, and the policies certainly they are flexible right now if we're reading publication 851. But what we need to do is we need to have policies that are a little more descriptive, so that future planners and future staff and future council can look to those and just see, that the intention was to look to that guiding document, because that guiding document is not always going to be referenced, that guiding document being publication 851. So that was the purpose of doing that. And I agree 100% with the objector that the policies in place they do provide that flexibility, because they have they follow the definition of the PPS. But again, you want by expanding that and providing more information, you're giving your staff the tools it needs to review these proposals in full. And in terms of the cost and expenses, I would disagree that someone who can't afford an application fee can't afford to be establishing a use. There are many uses that we talked about, something like a yoga studio. Bring that up again because that's a great example. That, if somebody, that doesn't take much money to establish something like that. So I don't think that's in my opinion is a valid excuse to stop people or require people to go through the application process. And the other thing is that that we have all sorts of different people. We're focused on agricultural zones and rural zones at this point. We have all sorts of other zones in the township that permit things as of right, and that don't require public consultation, and don't require Planning Act applications. Planning Act applications are not required for every single land use that we have. And so again, it goes back to my point from before that in my introduction, and that's that what we're trying to provide here is some flexibility, and we're trying to make it so that farmers do not have to go through that lengthy process of Planning Act applications.
Okay, thank you, Kent. We'll continue with the public meeting. Is there anybody in attendance who would also like to speak in opposition or to seek clarification on this particular application? There is a caller on the line, but I don't know who that is. 930-2320. Heather, do you know? I'm just wondering if that's Mark's dialing in.
Mayor Taylor, that is Councillor Allen.
Okay. Mark, you're on mute. Can you hear me okay? Take yourself off mute just so we know that you're able to communicate.
Hi, Mayor Taylor. I can hear you.
Okay, perfect. That's great. Good. Okay, so I believe I've covered everyone. There was no one else wishing to speak in opposition, seek clarification, correct? Oh, I'm sorry, Pat. Pat, you've got your hand up, which is what I asked you to do. Thank you. Please state your name and address and then go ahead.
Excuse me, Mayor Taylor, I think maybe the Judy Coward, if she put her mute button on, I'm getting feedback. I don't know if anyone else is.
Right, Judy, thank you. See if that helps. Go ahead, Pat.
Thank you, Mayor Taylor. For the record, my name is Pat Learmonth. My address is 1726 Henderson Line in Otonabee-South, Monaghan, Keene. And we are farmland owners, and I just wanted to make sure that it was on the record that in my personal capacity, I continue to feel that these amendments should not be adopted by council as they're currently drafted for all of the reasons that have been put forward by the Future of Food Farming Working Group and this evening by Judy Coward. Another just couple of small comments, because so many interesting things have been said this evening. I just wanted to mention that the question of a yoga studio has come up now repeatedly. And from my reading of the current definition of home occupations in the current official plan, you know, they're basically defined to include a number of things, including an art or music teacher or similar activity, either in the dwelling or a separate accessory building. And I'm just wondering if it wouldn't be true that a yoga studio might be no different than what was anticipated in any event as a home occupation in an accessory building that, you know, could be a part of the barn or something along those lines. I'd also just like to mention that there was a meeting last week of the Peterborough Agricultural Roundtable where the topic of diversified uses was raised with a number of farmers around the table, some of whom are Otonabee-South Monaghan farmers and others were not. But I think that there is a general lack of understanding among the farm community as to what is currently possible. And it wasn't surprising to hear from Jamie that she had gotten a lot of phone calls from farmers asking those questions. I think that there is a need for education in terms of what is currently permitted under the home occupation and the existing diversified uses provisions. And then, you know, a very serious conversation about how much further we need to go with those things, just to make sure that really there are additional uses that need to be considered. And the one other thing that I just wanted to mention is that in looking at the current on-farm diversified uses in the official plan, there's a section that reads, before an on-farm diversified use will be permitted, it must satisfy all of the following criteria. And the very first criteria that's mentioned is a secondary use shall be conducted only by persons who reside on the farm property and whom, and who it should be, are involved in conducting the farm operation. And I thought it was fascinating to read that, because part of the concern currently is that it's unclear who's going to be farming and who's going to be running the on-farm diversified use. And yet the existing official plan provisions in Otonabee-South Monaghan seem to sort of specifically address that and try to specify pretty clearly that the person conducting the secondary business is supposed to be conducting the primary business. And in this case, I'm not sure that going forward, we would see that kind of requirement in place. So those are my general comments, and thank you very much for the opportunity to speak again this evening.
Okay, thank you, Pat. Kent, I'll give you the chance to respond if you wish to, or it's up to you.
Yeah, just quickly, Mayor Taylor. So that current policy that Pat spoke to, I don't believe that's something that we wanted to change because of the reasons of enforceability, and we don't believe that that's an enforceable policy or provision. So that's why we've elected to change that. That's one of the reasons, and for the number of reasons that I've spoke to before. And then just in terms of, you know, we use the example of the yoga studio. There are limitations in terms of the size of your home occupation, right? So you're only limited to 25% of the gross floor area. So again, if someone has a slightly larger scale, then we run into issues of having to go through that process. That's you know, yoga studio is an example, and yes, it could very well be permitted as a home occupation. We're going to get into that, but certainly what we're looking for is something that goes slightly beyond that scale, but shouldn't have to go through the process of you know, whether it be a Planning Act application or any other studies or site plan control.
Okay, go ahead, Greg.
Just wanted to let you know, Mr. Mayor, so Mark's back on, he's on phone and he's on video, so I'm not sure when it came down to the round of comments from councillors, I'm not sure whether he wants to say anything or not. I've been texting back and forth with him here. So.
No, that's fine. And that's what I was going to do. Council have had their say at this, but I was going to swing back to, excuse me, Deputy Clerk, I'm going to swing back to Councillor Allen. Mark, I don't know if you're able to ask a question or communicate during the council portion of this. Is there something you'd like to ask or say before we move forward?
Am I unmuted now, Mayor Taylor?
We can hear you. Yep.
Well, that's great because I haven't had much of a chance to speak this evening, but I am having internet problems, and I thank you for your patience. Quickly, with regard to the on-farm diversification use policy, I've heard everything, and I appreciate every comment, and I do appreciate the report, Kent, very in depth and again, I kind of liken it to, in my mind, and I'm just trying to sort out as I've heard this evening, the concerns around, on-farm diversification use and approvals at the township level. But in my mind, it sort of is similar. I mean, the policy will be laid out, and it's similar to a building permit application in that sense. What Am I wrong in thinking that way, in the sense that there's certain policies and requirements laid out under that provision? It's dealt with at the office level and with staff, and then if something falls sort of outside that, where you need a minor variance or something, then it would come before council. Would it be, in my mind, that's how I'm piecing this together in the use, and I just wondered if you can confirm sort of that thought for me.
Through the mayor to Councillor Allen, yeah, it's a little more intensive than that, but certainly it's a matter of someone receiving an application and comparing it against the zoning provisions. But in this case, the staff is actually required to look through official plan policy, and there's a lot more requirements for it. Whereas if you get a building permit for a permitted use, you just have to comply with whatever the permitted use is and the setbacks and whatever else the zoning says for your property or requires for your property. Whereas here, the staff is checking against the number of uses. Staff is also, or uses, the number of requirements. Staff is also required to meet with the applicant. So it's a little more intensive, but yes, in terms of the delivery, and the fact that it's at a staff level, I think there's somewhat of a comparison there. But I would say there's it's a little more intensive and a little more involved.
Does that answer your question, Mark?
Yes, that's fine. Thanks, Kent, and again, thanks for everybody in their comments this evening.
Was there anything else, Mark, that you wish to ask before I move this meeting along?
Not at this point. Thanks.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, Deputy Clerk, I'm going to make a few comments, and I'm going to have to move this along here.
I just have, if I may, after you're finished, I have one clarification just around assessment after you're done, Mayor.
Is that around assessment? Is that something to do with this report?
Yes.
Okay, go ahead, ask now.
Just if it was a commercial or industrial use through the mayor to Kent, would it be the tax, would it be based on a commercial or industrial rate, or would it be rated differently? So I just want to know the land tax. He's muted.
No,
sorry. Through the mayor, I'm not completely sure, but I would say that because it's a secondary use, the primary use is still agriculture, that it would keep that taxation rate, because you're not establishing the on-farm diversified commercial or industrial use as a primary use on the property.
Thank you. And to my point, that's why I think if it is not the landowner doing the agricultural side, that this is a derailing of that process and people slipping in to set up commercial or industrial at a cheaper rate and at an advantage instead of the areas where we have deemed commercial and industrial to be zoned and built on for that matter. Thank you.
Okay, we've just got through the chat line a clarification that MPAC assesses by use. If it's commercial use, then commercial taxes apply on that portion of the property. Council, we've been at this over an hour, and we do have a council meeting we've got to get through. So I'm going to push here a bit. You know, it's interesting. We all want the very same thing. We're all into this discussion for the same reasons. We want to do what we can to help our small farms stay in business. And that's what's driving this. Now, we may not all agree on what road we need to take to get there, but I don't see as that should be such a terrible impasse because we all want the same thing. So we've got three choices here tonight, the way I see it. We can either approve the study as is presented and the OPA and refer it to our bylaw. We can defer it and ask Kent to come back and address some of the concerns that are raised by council. And if that's the case, I want those concerns identified. I don't want them just to go back wondering what it is we're looking for. Or we can simply not approve the study, and that would be a real shame because it has taken a long time. It's taken a lot of money, staff resources, and it's a good thing for our township. If we can get this to a point where we agree it's what we need, a lot of our small farmers are waiting on us. They're wanting us to put this through. They're looking forward to it. So I need some direction from council here. Which of those three options would you prefer to exercise? Deputy Clerk, go ahead, Bonnie.
I would like some specific things. I would like it to go back to Kent and certainly address some of the specific things that we've mentioned. I mean, I can put my concerns forth or anyone else and then come back again at this. I want to get it through. I think we are, just like the mayor said, all for, but I think there still has to be some tightening before I'm satisfied that we're actually doing what we want to do.
Okay, I may get back to you in a moment on some specifics, but Councillor Allen had his hand up. Go ahead, Mark.
Thanks, Mayor Taylor. You can hear me now.
Yeah.
And I personally would like to say that I think as we move forward, this is something that we definitely need. As you suggested, it's the only way we'll see the survival of the small to medium-sized farm operation in Otonabee-South Monaghan. And I would like to bring a motion to approve the report as it was delivered this evening and move it to the bylaw section of our regular meeting.
Okay, so I do have a motion on the floor. Councillor Allen has proposed that the study as presented be approved. Do we have a seconder for that motion? Councillor Powers, I want to make sure I'm clear on what's happening. Councillor Powers, are you seconding the motion? Yes, okay. Discussion.
Excuse me, Mayor Taylor. I put the motion on for it to go back.
I'm sorry, I did not hear that as a motion. It was more of a comment.
No, that's, you asked what direction, and that was the motion was to go back. And to the point, if we're going to keep small farms in place, this has to have some rejigging. So, I mean, it can get voted down, that's fine, but that was the motion. First was to go back.
I'm going to look for the clerk. Heather, was there a previous motion put on the floor?
Mayor Taylor, Deputy Mayor started to speak on it, but you didn't call them to be a vote. So.
Okay, so I'm going to go back. Sorry, Mark, I'm going to go back, Deputy Clerk. So let's be clear, Bonnie, your motion, what exactly is your motion?
My motion is to go back and address the concerns that have been brought up, and if we're going to keep small farms in the farming mode, because all this is doing basically is saying come in and we'll rent the farm out and come in and do the whatever you want. I want to keep the people that are on the small farms to allow them to diversify. And so
Okay.
that's what I want it tightened up, some public input around this. So the neighbors have a chance, and also that it comes to council. So there's a couple of things that I would ask.
That's the clarity I'm looking for. Your motion is that the report come back with measures that would provide public input and final approval by council. Is that what you're suggesting?
Yes, yes.
Okay.
And to allow the people on the farms rather than newcomers come in and just rent it out. That's what's happening now. We're not changing anything.
Okay. If the rest of the council understand the motion the deputy clerk has put forward, I need a seconder for that motion if we're going to discuss it. Councillor Howie has seconded that motion. Discussion. Does anyone wish to discuss this motion? If not, I'm going to call a vote. All in favor?
And a recorded vote, please.
Deputy clerk has requested a recorded vote. And I'll look to the clerk to go through that.
Okay. Councillor Allen,
Nay.
Deputy Mayor Clark,
Yes.
Councillor Howie,
Yes.
Councillor Powers,
Nay.
Mayor Taylor.
No. Now we'll go back. Mark, do you wish to reintroduce your motion?
I will, Mayor Taylor. Do I have to call it out again, or Heather?
Well, I believe, yes, the motion is to approve the study as presented.
That's correct.
Okay. And seconder, that was Councillor Powers. Okay. Recorded vote, please, to make this clearly understood, Heather.
Councillor Allen,
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Clark,
No.
Councillor Howie,
No.
Councillor Powers,
Yes.
Mayor Taylor.
Yes.
The motion is carried.
Motion is carried. Okay. Thank you very much, everybody. There's a great deal of interest in this, and it certainly is an important decision for our township. And there's a lot of other places looking and watching what we're doing here. I'd like to thank everybody for their involvement and also for your interest in the agricultural sector in our township. It's very important to everyone. Good to see you again, Jamie.
You as well.
And you. We will move on. As I say, we've got a council meeting to conduct now. So there was no public or agency submissions from these various reports we've had tonight. I just need a council motion to adjourn the public meeting, please. Powers and Allen, all in favor? That's carried. What I'm going to do, council and staff and anybody, members of the public who wish to stay, I'm going to call about a 2-minute recess. That'll allow all of us to flip over to our council meeting agenda. And we will resume the meeting at about 7:27. Thank you.
Good night, everyone.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye, Jamie.
Mayor Taylor, it's Mark.
The audio is still no good, Mark.
No good.
No.
I'll keep using the phone.
Yeah, that seemed to work okay.
Yeah, we were trying, Mark and I were having text fun here, trying to get them online, find them, call in and stuff like that. So my apologies, Mr. Mayor, for putting my hand up in the middle of the meeting.
That's all right. Okay, we're just waiting for Bonnie here. I'll give her a few more seconds, then we're going to move on. Okay, we've got council here. We will call our council meeting to order now at 7:28. I would ask if any members of council have a declaration of pecuniary interest in any of the matters that are before us tonight, please declare so. Seeing no declaration, are there any additions or deletions to the agenda? Seeing none, I need a motion, please, to adopt this agenda for tonight's meeting. Powers and Howie, all in favor? Carried. Thank you. Okay, there are no minutes to review at this particular meeting. We have a notice of motion here from Councillor Powers. Tonight is the night that we'll have our first chance at discussing and deciding on that. Councillor Powers, I'll turn it over to you. It's your notice if you want to read it and talk to it.
I certainly can do that. Thank you, Mayor Taylor. I'll read it and then just provide some commentary in terms of why I included this. So the notice of motion reads, whereas it is recognized that access to local waterways provides vital social and economic benefits to our community, and whereas the usage of our community boat launches has seen dramatic increases over the past year, and whereas Otonabee-South Monaghan staff and council have received messages of concern from community residents related to the increased usage of our community boat launches, therefore be it resolved that we request township staff undertake a formal review of all existing public boat launches to identify any necessary facility improvements to support current and future growth, including but not limited to parking, traffic, and appropriate safety measures. And be it further resolved that a review of unused boat launch facilities or township-owned lands that could be converted to public boat launches within our community also be undertaken.
Okay. Before we speak on that motion, Councillor Powers is going to move that motion. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Howie. Okay. Discussion. Go ahead, Nick.
So the reason I brought this forward is really, I think last year really highlighted the increased requirements and requests for the use of our public boat launches that we have within our township. And that I think identified some potential constraints as it relates to those public boat launches, as it relates to parking and traffic and other related issues that many on this Zoom call today in this council meeting have been privy to from various residents communicating with them. And so the reason I bring this forward is more around a proactive approach. I would dare say that what we experienced last year is likely to come again this year, and not very long from now, we will see boats and trailers showing up at our boat launches at increasing numbers than probably we've seen never before, except for last year. And so this, although it may be a little bit late to address or prepare to some extent for this year's fishing and boating season, I think it's an opportune time for us to proactively assess what we have within the township as it relates to our public boat launches, our community boat launches, what facilities or improvements, if we could or would want to, make to those particular facilities, and sort of in an ideal world, prepare a work plan, a strategic plan, if you will, as it relates to access to our local waterways. And I'm not saying necessarily that we would have this enacted in terms of a work plan or strategic plan for this year or any time in particular, but rather just setting the stage for what what we have and maybe where we want to go in preparation for potential growth into the coming years. I think Greg and I have had conversations regarding this particular topic on a couple of occasions, and Greg has certainly alluded, and it's a very good point, it's a valid point, it's related to this, which is the township doesn't actually own the launch per se. They own the roadways to access those particular launches in many cases, but we as a township don't necessarily own the launch per se. So this particular motion would really be related to those roadways and facilities leading up to the actual launch, if you will, into the local waterways. Greg may be able to speak to that a little bit better, but that's really, it's coming from a proactive approach rather than a reactive approach. And if there's something that we can do in preparation to enhance our boat launches in the future, then, you know, I think it's an opportune time for us to at least have those internal discussions. And I'll leave it there for any comments.
Very good. Any, first, I'm going to let members of council speak first, Greg, and then we'll get some feedback from staff. Deputy Clerk, did you have your hands up?
Yes, through the mayor. Great idea to bring this forward because of the use and to identify problems and the safety issues I'm concerned about, and the parking of traffic and our liability as well around that. So certainly I'm looking forward for a report to come forward from staff to identify the parking issue particularly, and the safety and liability around that. So that's all I want to, you know, where do we fit liability wise as well, Greg, if you can, you know, report when you look into it back for council. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Howie, I think I saw your hand up.
Yep. Yeah, thank you, Mayor Taylor. Yeah, even going forward with our just diversity for the farmers and that, they're going to want to have more tourism to come up here to buy stuff from all the farms and everything else. So the better that we can make our launches and more attractive, like I say, the better it'll be. And I think one of the biggest concerns is the parking issue, where we got to be able to open them up, whether it's wider ditches for parking and that, and just make it all easier for people to access everything.
Okay, very good. Councillor Allen, I want to make sure you have the opportunity to speak if you're trying to.
Thanks, Mayor Taylor. I did put my hand up, but I'm not sure how quickly.
No, unfortunately, your picture's frozen, but go ahead, Mark.
Okay, so when I want to speak, maybe I'll just unmute and I'll jump in when I think it's not this sort of motion that. But thank you for the opportunity to speak to Councillor Powers. I'd like to say I support this motion. I think it's a great opportunity for the township to look at our boat launch facilities. It's a very unique township in which we reside, in the sense that you know, we just talked about one of probably our biggest industry in farming, and our second one's probably tourism. So this kind of flows along nicely with trying to support our local industries and help them along the way, in the sense that I think, and it's all been talked about, but parking, facilities, just facilities in general, access to water, not only for our tourism facilities, it's for those folks that come to visit our township, and most of all for our residents who reside in our township. I think quite often one of the reasons that this is such a desirable location to reside is the access to water in our waterways. So I definitely would support this motion to move it forward and take a better look at what we have, where we might go in the future, and definitely around the parking. I do believe that's something other municipalities support around boat launches. So I would like to see what opportunities might exist in this sense. Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much. I'll just make a couple of comments before I turn it over to Greg. We're really lucky to live in an area with as much public water access as we do. And sometimes that can create problems. It creates far more benefits than cost, but it can create problems. And we saw some of those last year. I support this motion. What I see, it could do a couple of things for us. First of all, it will clearly identify which boat launches we actually own and which ones we don't, because there's some confusion there. I am concerned about the timing of it, and what I mean by that is, as council knows, our Director of Public Works is leaving next week, and the position won't be filled for a little while on a permanent basis. So I don't know exactly how this study would be conducted, because I see it being a public works initiative. So I'm going to turn it over to Greg. We had a couple of comments, and help us out, Greg, with what would be a realistic time frame to come back with something for council.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As you mentioned, that these access points are both a blessing and a curse some days, and what council needs to remember, and this is what I had shared with in a couple of conversations I had with Councillor Powers, is that we really don't have boat launches per se. We have road allowances that end at the water's edge. And so we've probably got 8 or 9 access points to Rice Lake and to the Otonabee River. And so we don't, other than what we share with Asphodel Norwood, where there's a dock in Birdsall, we really don't operate a dock or a ramp or those sort of types of things. And so we just have road allowances that go to the water's edge. So and that provides the access to the water. I can tell you, coming from where I was at in Leeds and the Thousand Islands, along the St. Lawrence, I think we had 2 access points for the public for water access to the St. Lawrence, and everything else was private. And it just caused, if you think we have turmoil here, it caused a lot of turmoil there. So we are blessed with that road access to the water's edge. And so, we'll do a report with an inventory that talks a little bit about that. We don't have, physical structures. We don't have public docks. So I just want to make sure that, council's clear about that when we come back and say, here's the report. As far as public works is concerned, we can work this through and try to have timing for this. I would hope that we could get something in place and have it returned back. So we're near we're at the end of the first quarter now. So I would try to have it come to the end of the second quarter. So the end of June sometime, maybe beginning of July. And that hopefully at that particular time, we'll have a body in place for the Director of Public Works. So that would be my sort of take on timing and some comments about these. And if you have any questions, I'd certainly be pleased to answer.
Well, thank you. That was the timing was my biggest concern. As far as the mover and the seconder of the motion, is the timing of that acceptable? Sometime towards around the end of June is what staff are suggesting is reasonable, realistic?
Yes. Yep.
Okay, good. Should be something as simple then as just calling the vote. The motion's pretty clear. The notice of motion there. Staff understands the direction being given by council. All in favor of the motion? That is carried. Mark, your vote is?
I'm in favor, yes.
Favor. Okay, thank you. That motion is carried. Thank you very much. Okay, moving down now, we have no delegations. We're going to go right into staff reports, 9.1, which is a community center update. And I know Mike's been waiting patiently there. Go ahead, Mike.
Thanks, Mayor Taylor, members of council. I'll make this brief because I know we're a bit behind, but I'm sure you guys have all had a chance to read it. Today would have been the week mark, or it is the 2-week mark from when we went into the red zone. And obviously we didn't move out of the red zone. If that happened, it would have happened today. It would have been announced this past Friday, but it did not going forward. It'll be every week now. It gets reevaluated by the province, and we will find out weekly, I guess, or find out nothing, like happens if you don't change color. But so for us specifically, that really hasn't changed much. As I said in the report, we're full of bookings, and I think the amount of calls I've been getting will be full of bookings as long as we want to stay open. Millbrook announced today they had lost their minor hockey program and a few other groups, but they were still open 4 days a week, but they've decided to close completely. So that's one more arena down. We're basically the only ones left outside of the city of Peterborough. They closed the Kinsman facility, but the Evinrude and the Memorial Center are still open. So so we are the only ones. But as I said in the report, 98% of the facilities that closed are because of losing rentals and losing their minor hockey programs, which obviously makes a big difference when you lose out on 40 hours a week just for one group. With the amount of interest we've gotten from users, Greg and I have been talking about it. I think we're still comfortable staying open till April 30th because, like I said, I can almost say with 100% certainty that if we're open and it's not gray zone, we're not closed, then we'll be getting full hours, we'll be getting full bookings just like we have all year. So as long as it's coming in, we might as well keep it open. That would see us make approximately 30 to 35,000 extra just from April. Obviously there's more expenses involved with that, but between utilities and staff, we're still going to be up revenue. And while that's not, I think the most important point is that, you know, I've gotten weekly calls from community members thanking us for keeping our facility open. I think a lot of people don't realize that a lot of them were closing because they lost so many rentals and stuff. They just see that everybody around us is closing and we've been able to stay open. So I think our community members are definitely really happy about it. And I know our youth are pretty excited they can keep playing. Speaking from experience with my son and the teams he plays for, everybody's pretty happy. We've still got the ice in, so I think we should, as long as we can keep the rentals going, we should keep it that way. I'll open up the floor to questions if any of you guys have any.
Thank you, Mike. Okay, Deputy Clerk first. Questions, to Mike?
Yes, a couple of questions, but more saying thank you for all the efforts that have gone over there. And I know the community and outside the community is very appreciative. So I just want to say to you and the staff, thank you on behalf of council. For me to be able to get a good look at what has going on, and it sounds as if, you know, it's as rosy a picture as possibly could be. I noticed the revenues were down 500, Mike, and 800 because the curling isn't going on, but certainly on the other side, it's, you know, up to possibly even 40,000. So that is a good news story. What I would ask, and there's no timeline on this, I guess it would have to be after April, though. I would like to look at revenues if we could pull out from October 2019 to April 2020, and then the same for the following year, 2020, from October to April 2021, just to do a comparable, because I appreciate that the revenues are up, and certainly your effort, but I'd like to see a comparable for those 2 years in this COVID world we're facing, if that could be. And I don't know, through the mayor to Heather, if I need to make a motion on that to come, you know, maybe the third quarter, whatever, but I'd just like to get a good visual on how this has affected the revenues at the rec center.
Well, if I can suggest, perhaps, Mike, with your next report to council, you could just simply include that information in it. But I think to get a fair picture, you also need to look at the expense side, because while the revenue wasn't coming in, the plant may have been shut down and we weren't burning the hydro. So you really need to see both sides of that picture to try to get a better idea of what happened financially.
Point taken, but I'm wondering to the mayor if that is too soon, because it'll have to be through to the end of April. Maybe we'll be looking at a June thing, right? If you're going to do it to the end of April.
So, Mike, I think if it's fair to say, when it's appropriate to include that information in the next report you're bringing to council, I think Deputy Clark's saying that's fine. It doesn't have to be the next report, just the report after this time period is over with. which is the end of April of 2021.
Yeah. Mhm.
So
Yeah,
sometime
Deputy
after
Clark,
that.
no, that's, yeah, that'll be pretty easy to get that information, and I can
Okay.
check with council the next time.
I don't need a motion then.
I don't think so. I think we're just asking staff to include it in the report.
Perfect.
Fine.
Nope, thank you.
Greg,
That
did you-
works. Thank you very
Well,
much.
just certainly that between between Mike and I and our treasurer Jocelyn,
Mhm.
those particular values together, and we'll put it in Mike's report.
Okay,
Perfect.
thank you.
Okay.
And great work.
Did somebody else have their hand up? Yeah, I think Ken. Yeah, sorry. Councillor Howie, go ahead.
Thanks for that report, Mike. Keep up the good work. I think we're doing a great job keeping all the kids happy with the ice going. I guess the big question is, how's the warmer weather this week affecting the ice? And I think we're down a compressor, are we, or something, or dryer or something, isn't it?
Yeah, actually, Ken, Councillor Howie, we're down a Duskin or a dehumidifying unit, but it's been that way all year. We staggered through at the start of the year. The humidity levels are still fine. I imagine a couple more days of this and they'll start to steadily climb. Usually takes a couple days for it to get in here and really start to raise the number. But 15, like around here, isn't bad. It'll be mid-April, late April I'm concerned about. It's when you get 3 or 4 20, 25 degree days in a row that you start to get into trouble. Like you see the odd time in September, but as long as it cools after, it usually isn't too bad. You only have a day or two of high humidity, and I don't foresee that big of a problem personally, Councillor Howie, with it getting too bad in here. But it all really depends on what kind of April we have.
Any further questions? I'm looking at Mark, just want to make sure I don't miss you. Oh, sorry, Councillor Powers, you go ahead. And Mark, if you want to make a comment, just take the mute button off and I'll see that. Go ahead, Nick.
Thank you, Mayor Taylor. Yeah, I just want to reiterate Deputy Clark's comments and Councillor Howie's comments around, again, as someone who participates in minor hockey down there, I have a child that's participating and I am coaching down there. I have heard nothing but compliments about staff in their willingness to keep the facility going and working with minor hockey and the various organizations that are down there to keep this thing going when others decided it was not in their best interest to do so. And so I've received numerous compliments about that. So, you know, I think kudos to you, Mike, and your team and staff overall to have the foresight to decide that, yes, this was worthwhile. This is something that's important to our community, and the community is saying thank you. And I've heard that numerous times over and over again. So yeah, well done.
Yeah, to what Councillor Powers just said, I should have added that. I said it in my report, but the user groups have been, you know, they are the real reason we're open still. And I think it really didn't change a lot going into red zone for minor hockey programs. They got dressed outside, no spectators, but they already had 10 kids on the ice because that's what OMHA wanted at the start of the year. So I think a lot of organizations around us may have thought, you know, let's get out of this year and move on to next year when that happened. But like I said, we didn't lose one youth rental because of this. And it's because of the commitment from our local youth groups that we're still open.
Very good. Thank you, Mike. Councillor Allen, I see you're off mute. Go ahead, Mark.
Yes, thanks, Mayor Taylor. And I know we're pressed for time, and I'm just reiterating what's already been said, but so much support from the community in saying thank you to the staff to make this work for our youth, and to council and staff support and keeping it open. It really is making a difference to our youth in their lives right now. They're enjoying the opportunity to still be on the ice and play hockey. I guess if hopefully we await good news and we can get the old guys back on the curling rink at maybe next week, that would be great too. But again, thank you, Mike and staff, and just pass that along because I know our community greatly appreciates the efforts and the commitment to staying the course. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Allen.
Very good. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is why it's called Awesome Township. Thank you, Mike. You can see the council are very pleased with the efforts you're putting in over there, and the community is as well. So thank you. Motion please to accept the report for information from the manager of recreation, Councillor Howie and Councillor Powers. All in favor? Carried. Okay, the Drummond Line surface treatment. Greg, are you going to lead that one? I see Brian. I don't think Brian's on the meeting tonight.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, between myself and our clerk deputy CAO. So I think it's it's relatively explanatory. Actually, what I'm going to do is I'll turn it over to Heather, because Heather and Brian were the ones that put the report together.
Mayor Taylor and Council, the report before you is our recommendation with respect to the surface treatment tender. In looking at last year's tender, we did there was a clause in there that we had the ability to extend the contract if we were satisfied, and there was 3 check marks, which is in the report. And Miller Paving did check off on all 3. One was satisfactory of the done. And this is in accordance with our procurement bylaw as well, and in consultation with the CAO, and that's why the report is being brought before you tonight. As indicated in the report, Miller Paving has identified that they would keep the pricing the same as what it was in 2020. So there'll be no increases in pricing if we retain their services. I'm not sure if you have any questions with respect to that.
Sure. Thank you, Heather. Questions, Deputy Clerk, go ahead.
No question. It's straightforward and well done. I will say to Heather and to our superintendent and Miller Paving. I wish Miller Paving had done all of the roads, including the county ones as well. So in saying that, I move the recommendation. Thank you.
Moved by Deputy Clerk that we approve the recommendation, and it is seconded by Councillor Powers. All in favor? Mark? All in favor? I had enough hands to carry the motion. Thank you. I wondered, if somebody's going to mention that. I know Councillor Allen and Deputy Clark and I were very aware of the difference in the quality of work between the surface treatment on Division Road by Miller in our township, and the Dufferin did the work on Serpent Mounds Road, and it was night and day. And I'll tell you what, I'm very surprised is that Miller is holding the price, because surface treatment price is directly tied to the price of oil. And if you remember last year, gas was under $1 a liter about this time. This year it's $1.20 plus. So I was shocked when they agreed to do it for the same price, because I know in the past it's been directly tied to the price of oil. Anyway, Deputy Clerk, you had a comment?
Just a comment through to council, and we all know Serpent Mounds Road, that the road we're pertaining to, there has been a restructuring at the county, and we will be bringing that one forward again. After the snow plowing on that road, the line is already gone again. And so there is still lots of issues that have to be addressed for our citizens, but that is the county road. And certainly with the restructuring, we will bring it forward. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, moving down now to staff reports, building, planning, and property. And over to our planner, Ken Scullion, 13.1. Go ahead, Ken.
This first severance application is application B721, which proposes a new vacant lot on the lands addressed 2638 Burnham Line, which is located at the northeast portion of the lot. The proposed severed lot is approximately 0.4 hectares with 63 meters of frontage along Division Road. The proposed retained lot is approximately 30 hectares with approximately 1,100 meters of frontage along Division Road. Rezoning of the severed parcel will be required from rural zone to rural residential zone to meet the lot area and lot frontage requirements. The retained lands will be required to be rezoned from rural to environmental protection accordingly to be consistent with the official plan's environmental protection land use designation. That's about it. I don't know if there are any questions.
Any questions from members of council to Ken on this one? Severance application? If there are no questions, is council prepared to make a decision? Deputy Clerk, go ahead.
Approved. to follow the recommendation.
And there are 4 conditions approved with the 4
Yes.
conditions listed. Councillor Powers, you either hand up a second it, seconded by
Yes, sir.
Councillor Powers. Call the vote. All in favor? Carried. Thank you. Okay, moving down now to consent file B1421. Take it away, Ken.
So this is for the Fontaine severance, B1421. This proposed severed lot has approximately 0.44 hectares with 73 meters of frontage on Burnham Line. The proposed retained lot has a frontage of approximately 105 meters along Burnham Line with 6.43 hectares of lot area. Rezoning will be required to rezone the severed lands from rural 13 zone to rural residential for the lot frontage and lot area. Natural features will be rezoned accordingly to environmental protection. Now the rural 13 site specific requires an amendment because it currently permits 6.8 hectares, whereas the proposed retained lot is proposed to be 6.43 hectares. So the rural 13 zone will need to be amended to accommodate that new lot area. And also the existing natural features will be rezoned to environmental protection as well.
Okay, very good. Questions to the planner? Any member of council wishes? Any member of council willing to put forth a motion with this application? Councillor Howie, go ahead. You're on mute, Ken.
Approve the subject to the, approve the creation of the lot and approve the subject to the following conditions.
With the 3 conditions listed. Very good. So motion to approve with the 3 conditions, seconded by Councillor Powers. Call the vote. All in favor? Carried. Mark, if you wish to vote contrary to what the vote is going in council, please jump in and let me know. Okay, Ambria. Lift hold. Greg, is this you?
Yes, I can speak to that. I didn't think that we would, well, we'd give Kent the rest of the night off there, and so he's the one that authored the report. I guess this is, I guess part of our good news thing is that this will allow us to take off the lift hold for phase 1, which is the 47 lots. And this would be the last of the township's conditions for this phase 1. So where they are now is that they're waiting to get their M plan registered with the county, and for the county to give it final approval, and then we'll be in a position where we can start to issue building permits for construction on the site. So if there's any questions, I'd be pleased to answer them.
Excellent. Deputy Clerk, go ahead.
Hallelujah. I'd like to remove the recommendation and lift the hold on the Ambria property identified as roll number 1506-010-007-19,000.
Very good. And that is seconded by Councillor Powers. Long time getting here.
Yeah.
My understanding is they have almost 90 homes ready to go as soon as the approvals are in place.
Mr. Mayor, yes, you're correct. So this is the first phase. We expect that they'll have their condominium agreement for, so they had talked about doing phases 2 and phases 3. I think we'll just see a separate condominium agreement, which would be for a combined second phase is what we're hearing from Ambria.
Very good. Thank you. Mark, I see you're off mute. Did you have a wish to say something on this one?
No, I was just going to second the motion, I think.
Okay, Councillor Powers has seconded it, but we will call the vote. All in favor of this motion? That is carried. Thank you very much. Thank you, Greg. Long time getting here, but all good things come to he who waits. Okay, 15.1, finance. Jocelyn, did you want to go through this lengthy report with us?
I can if you'd like, yeah.
Well, I see none of us have made the sunshine list yet.
Nope, you have not. I'm not sure. I wouldn't hold my breath.
So this is something that we must do according to the Municipal Act once a year, is list all our our statement of remuneration. So just really need a is there any questions or comments on it? If not, I need a motion just to receive it. Deputy Clerk?
I'll make the motion once you have a second, or I have a question.
Okay, I saw Councillor Howie with his hand up to second it. So go ahead with the question, Bonnie.
Not that you aren't worth it, Mayor Taylor, but could you tell me what the 475 or 474 council is? 68 council benefits.
It's actually at the bottom of the chart. It lists that it's for cell phone.
I didn't see that. I'm sorry. And I will just mention my mileage is round CD meetings that I attended as well.
Very good.
Okay, thank you for that.
So the motion is on the floor to receive this for information. As I say, it's something we must do every year. All in favor of that motion? That is carried. Thank you. We don't have much choice. Okay, moving down now to bylaws. Could I get a motion, please, at bylaw 2021 Sorry, go ahead, Barney.
Yes, could you please pull the one motion just for a recorded vote on the diversification?
So that's 2021-17.
Yes, I'm just getting there. I'm sorry.
And 18.
Yes, 2021-18, 16.4.
17 and 18 both deal with the OFDU. So you would like that pulled separately on a recorded vote?
Yeah. Yes, please.
Okay. Could I get a motion, please, then that bylaw number 2021-15, 16, and 19 be read a first time? Howie and Powers, all in favor? Carried. I had asked the clerk to review those three bylaws, please.
Bylaw 2021-15 is your planning, your zoning bylaw amendment for McClure and Glen. 2021-16 is your zoning bylaw amendment for Marchildon. And 2021-19 is the holding removal bylaw for Ambria.
Very good. Any questions of the clerk on any one of these three bylaws? Seeing no questions, could I please have a motion that bylaws 2021-15, 16, and 19 be read a second and third time, signed, sealed, and the corporate seal attached? Powers, and I'm going to give Councillor Allen a chance. Councillor Allen, you second that?
I'll second that motion.
Seconded by Councillor Allen. All in favor? That is carried. Thank you. Okay, now, Bonnie, did you say you requested a recorded vote on this?
Yes.
Okay, so could I get a motion, please, that bylaw 2021-17 and 18 be read a first time? Powers? And Mark, will you move that they be read a second time, be read a first time?
Yeah, I'll make that motion. Thank you.
Okay, Powers and Allen. Okay, I'd like the clerk to review those two bylaws, please.
Bylaw 2021-17 is your OPA number 9 for the OFDUs and home business. 2021-18 is your zoning bylaw amendment for OFDUs and home business.
Thank you. Any questions to the clerk on these two bylaws? Deputy Clerk has requested a recorded vote that bylaws 2021-17 and 18 be read a second and third time, signed, sealed, and the corporate seal attached. So I guess, Heather, you go through the recorded vote list, please.
Councillor Allen?
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Clark?
No.
Councillor Howie?
No.
Councillor Powers?
Yes.
And Mayor Taylor?
Yes.
Mr. Mayor,
Sure.
I just have a clarification. So that you had stated that motion was for the second and the third and final. That motion should have been for the first reading.
Should have got that for the first one. Okay, I apologize for that. Can we just go back and say that recorded vote was not the second and third reading, Greg?
No, because you didn't do a first reading on that one. You didn't do a first reading on that.
I think we did get a motion on that. Go ahead, Heather.
Mayor
Heather?
Taylor, you did get the first, yeah, so that is for the first motion. It's Powers and Allen. You did not go into a second and third reading.
So now the recorded vote was that the bylaws be read a second, third time, signed, sealed, and the corporate seal
Oh, sorry.
attached, correct?
Yes, correct.
So is that all good now, or?
No, I just wanted to make sure that you not, I think you have to have a motion to do the first and second of those readings. And then
Okay.
a motion for the third and final reading.
We can go back and do it again. What I did was just a motion just to be read a first time, and then a recorded vote on the second and third
Okay,
reading.
I just wanted to make sure that we're following the
Is
first.
that, Bonnie, is that?
I'm fine with that, and I will just speak for myself, Councillor Howie, but as long as for each of the readings that I am recorded as no.
Yep, that's recorded. Okay. All right, I think we can move on. Thank you. Correspondence, Council. We've got 17.1, the Township of Brock with cannabis enforcement. What's your pleasure there? Councillor Powers.
Motion to support.
Support by Powers. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Howie has seconded that. Call a vote. All in favor? That is carried. Thank you. South Glengarry, a resolution regarding the provincial vaccine rollout. Deputy Clerk.
Motion to receive.
Received by Clark. Do I have a seconder? Powers would second that. Call the vote. All in favor? That is received.
Good.
Okay. The last one is some information really about the fire safety grant being offered. Greg, did you wish to speak to it?
Yes, I need to speak to this on behalf of the fire chief.
Okay.
So not only do we need to pass a motion related to the correspondence, is that the fire chief will need a motion and a resolution for council to support us in our application for this funding program as well.
So that would be a separate motion you'd like this evening, Greg, is that correct?
Correct, please.
Okay, so first, if I'm hearing it, we need a motion to receive the correspondence and then a separate motion authorizing staff to make application, is that correct?
You can either do it together or you can do it separate, whatever you.
Let's do it all together, all in one then.
Yeah.
Deputy Clerk, motion to receive.
I would make the motion to support. Anytime we're getting money, I want to support it and to move the motion to put the application forward.
So the motion is to receive the correspondence and that council authorizes the township to support the submission of an application for funding in the amount of $6,200. That's moved by Deputy Clerk, seconded by Councillor Allen. You want to second that one?
I will.
Councillor Allen is seconded. Call the vote. All in favor? Carried. Thank you very much. Okay, there's nothing in your information package. Is there anything under other matters? Seeing none, we have no closed session. I just need a motion to adjourn, and that is moved by Councillor Allen and it is seconded by Councillor Howie. All in favor? We are adjourned. Thank you very much, council. Thank you, staff. That was a long meeting, but we got through it. Good night.